on the use of shadows in the Batman White Knight universe. Batman: The White Knight is a 2017 Black Label DC Elseworld created by Sean Murphy that centers around the story of the Joker and Harley Quinn. Along with this is a boatload of propaganda hiding behind an anti-police brutality message. How exactly that makes sense, I'm not quite sure, but that isn't the topic of this video. Maybe next time. In short, what's important to know about Batman White Knight is that it's set in an alternate universe where Jason Todd was the first Robin, the Joker can go sane, and Harley Quinn is two separate people. All of these points are important, but to touch on that last part, the traditional Harley Quinn is still Harleen Quinzel, who left the Joker following the supposed death of Jason Todd. But the more Suicide Squad-esque Harley Quinn is an ex-bank teller turned replacement clown named Marion Drews. The actual story of the book is about the Joker going sane until some questionable medication Harleen designed, and turning from trying to take Batman down on the streets to trying to take him down in court. Marion Drews, who's gone through a lot of titles and who I'm just going to call Neo-Joker for simplicity, takes issue with Joker leaving her for Harleen and tries to do his job better than he ever did, so he'll come back to her and be the Joker again. She doesn't exactly succeed. But what we'll be focusing on in this essay will mostly be on a few of White Knight's sequel books, namely White Knight Presents Harley Quinn, Beyond the White Knight, and White Knight Generation Joker. White Knight's most prevalent visual motif is shadows and reflections showing the true self. Throughout all of the books, almost all of the characters have gone through at least one role or other name in the past they've moved on from, but there are a few that are particularly important.
Who has the coolest gadgets? Who has the tricked out ride? Who does the sickest backflips? Batman!
Of course, I'm going to start with the titular characters of this Elseworld and, to be honest, the greater Batman universe. Batman and the Joker, Bruce Wayne and Jack Napier. Both parts of each of the characters are equally important in White Knight, even if they might not be in the general Batman mythos. Now, with Batman, the Bat Shadow is there throughout every part of almost every book, so we have a lot of points to touch on, even if some are more important than others. But what is really important throughout is the Joker's shadow. It's pretty early on that the Joker goes back to being Jack Napier. However, despite this, the Joker's silhouette remains his shadow a majority of the time. I believe this was meant to show that even as he masquerades about as Jack Napier and is convinced he's back to being sane, the Joker is always still there in the back of his mind, never truly leaving him or the story. And inevitably, as predicted, the Joker returns eventually during the final battle against Neo-Joker. But this is far from the last time we see the Joker return. Now, while almost every panel of Bruce throughout White Knight and Beyond the White Knight has the Batman silhouette almost to the point of overuse, there are a few panels in particular I feel are deeply important to the story and all of its characters. Not all of these examples use shadows directly, but the use of reflections is almost the exact same and serves the same purpose. Now, this panel from Beyond the White Knight has Bruce in his totally not Batman outfit and Dick Grayson as Cop Nightwing, but the shadows warp into the shape of the classic Batman and Robin pose popularized by, I believe, Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. They might not have been Batman and Robin in a long time, but ultimately for them that is always where it returns to. Batman and Robin, a father and his son. Even with years, even decades of separation and estrangement, this always remains. In a similar fashion, these panels, also for Beyond the White Knight, of Bruce Wayne and Jason Todd, while not shadows and instead reflections, feel very similar to the previous Batman and Robin panel. In their reality, you can see two practical strangers with a shared past, 20 years back. In the reflection, you see an echo of days long past, Batman and his very first Robin, Batman and his gravest mistake. Once we get to the part of Beyond the White Knight in which Jack Napier's hologram ghost starts haunting Bruce, the very first panel in which we see Jack is this incredibly striking full page in which we see his new design. It's a sort of mix of the hyper-professional Jack Napier and the green and purple of the Joker. And once again, the shadows of the panel do not belong to Bruce Wayne and Jack Napier. They are completely Batman and the Joker's. Even later on, once Jack has effectively possessed Bruce, in the art we can see Jack's face on Bruce's body as an easy visual shorthand for what's going on. But even so, the shadow he creates is not Jack's, Joker's, or Bruce's. It's Batman's. While not Bruce Wayne, Terry McGinnis is still Batman, so I thought I'd touch here for a moment. The first issue of Beyond the White Knight opens with Terry stealing the Batsuit from the ruins of the Batcave, as is traditional of most Batman Beyond stories. Terry's Batman throughout almost this entire book, but not once does he get the Bat Shadow when not in costume. Every time we see Terry McGinnis and not Batman, we see a completely normal Shadow without any hint of the bat ears that we see when we see Bruce's. And I don't think this is for no reason. I think this was because at this point, while he is Batman, he isn't really Batman. He hasn't thrown himself in the role of it fully yet. He has more of a work-life balance than Bruce ever did, and as Batman, that's a skill in and of itself. But Batman and Joker aren't the only characters for which this visual technique is used. Now, as previously stated, there are two Harley Quinns in this universe, but Neo Joker doesn't typically get this kind of shadow play. Harleen Quinzel, however, she gets a lot of mileage out of the shadows, but I feel it's just as important as noting when she does use them to note where she doesn't make use of this motif. While throughout most of Beyond the White Knight she used them almost without fail, this isn't the same in her solo book, White Knight Presents Harley Quinn. Here, you would think they would go wild with it, but no, there are very few use of it throughout all of its 6 issues. When we see her shadow, it's almost always completely normal and devoid of the usual jester cap and collar. Except here, in these limited panels where we do see the jester cap, and I believe there was a reason for this artistic decision. Throughout the whole book, Harleen is trying to do it all: be a mother, figure out life without being Harley Quinn, and help solve a string of gruesome murders all at once. And not once do we see the shadows. This is until Harley talks to Bruce about her perspective of the night that Jack turned into the Joker, another piece of the Harley Quinn backstory that has been developing over the past few books. And then, after a brief conversation with Renee Montoya about going home to her kids, she leaves the room and we finally see her shadow as the classic Harley Quinn silhouette. And from this point on, we see her shadow consistently as Harley Quinn instead of Harleen Quinzel. This is without consequence for most of the books, except in one specific instance later on. Welcome to the house of fun. Now I've come of age. Welcome to the house of fun. White Knight Presents Harley Quinn, we are introduced to Jackie Napier, Jack and Harleen's twins, along with her brother Bryce. Later on in Beyond the White Knight, we meet her aged up to about 13. When you look at her, you see the Joker's daughter, and I feel her design is very reminiscent of Dwayla Dent. And based off comments from Bryce, it isn't just the reader who can gather this. And through Beyond the White Knight, we see a prodigy who's trying too hard to be the Joker. And in her first panel, she says the clothes she's wearing were Joker's and she's fully decked out in purple and green. But that is far from the end of it. After saying some things she really shouldn't have said to her mother, we get this panel of Harleen and Jackie, or rather, we get this panel of Harley Quinn and the Joker. And this is the panel that led me to make this video to begin with. This is a panel I feel fully encompasses her character at this point in her arc. She's a little girl trying too hard to be the father she never knew, even though she knows her father wasn't a good man. She thinks that because she isn't like her good brother, she has to be the bad guy, and when her posturing in her family doesn't work, she runs away in an act of rebellion that ends up the catalyst for a major part of the story. And then, over the course of her arc, she learns that maybe being basically the Joker isn't all it's cracked up to be, and she eventually meets the hologram ghost of her father. She grows closer to the family she has in her mother, brother, and Bruce because of it, and learns to finally let go of her childhood fantasies. Or does she? She's still just a kid, and this is shown through the as of the writing of the script, most recent White Knight book, and the one we'll be touching on now. White Knight Generation Joker is about Jackie and Bryce going on a road trip with Jack's hologram, and while it focuses more on Bryce, it still puts a focus on Jackie learning just who the Joker really is, and seeing firsthand all the pain he's capable of causing. She sees what he did to Two-Face, she sees what he did to a lot of people, and all the pain he's caused, and the fact that so many people want him dead because of it, and she kind of starts to realize, what's the difference between Jack and the Joker? They're basically the same. They both did all of this. But to get back on topic, there isn't really much shadow play here. Which makes sense. Joker, Harley, and Bats aren't as big of players here as Bryce and Jackie. But there is about half a panel I want to touch on. So while it may be a major stretch to see this panel as a use of shadows, and I might be reading into this a bit, too much, I believe that this shadow here isn't just from the way her hair is in this panel. And that is because I think this shadow looks a little too much like the jester hat from the Harlequin shadow we keep seeing with Harleen to be ignored. Look at how it parts into two pieces, and while there's no sign of the usual balls at the end, that could be a nod to Batman's ears as well. And we know they aren't against using shadows with Jackie. They used it here, as previously mentioned, to show her as the Joker. So having her be her mother instead after the halfway point of her arc is very much a possibility. And I may be a bit delusional about this series, but I know what I'm saying here. And for most of the run, they're still with the Joker and at odds with, you guessed it, both Harley Quinns and the FBI as they chase after them in an attempt to bring them home. So this bit of shadow play could have a bit of clever foreshadowing. Now, there's a lot more examples of this use of shadows through predominantly Beyond the White Knight, in the case of Jack, Bruce, and Harleen specifically, but I'm pretty sure this was just about all the important ones. So until next time, listeners, if you want to see more like this, subscribe to my channel and like this video, and hit the notification bell down below to get notified when I post new videos. I'd like to give a special thanks to my friend, who I'm going to link in the description down below, for doing the stills and the art in this video. That wasn't the comic panels, obviously. He's linked. Go check him out. He's great. I think he only has a few videos up, but he's amazing, great artist. And if you want to see more from me specifically, I have a Tumblr that is also linked down below.